Hi, Lorenzo. How are you?
Good.
It's awesome to meet you. I'm a huge fan of your movies. So I just
Thank
want to
you.
get started with, I think, the million-dollar question is that at the end of you have this huge mic drop with the G.I. Joe
Sure.
crossover.
Yeah.
So what are you allowed to say about that? And
Well,
would it
yeah.
pick up after Snake Eyes or would it be something completely new?
Here's the answer. I don't know the second question's answer because we haven't gotten that far. But like every other Transformers movie, the ingredients of the movie is humans and robots get together to stop the villain. The Joes are going to be part of the ingredients now. We're not going into the Joe world, they're coming into our world. So if you think about it that way, I think that's the closest thing to the plan that we have. We now have to figure out the plot we want to do, et cetera. But they will be an active participant, if you would, a few of the characters in trying to stop the bad guy.
So I'm looking forward to that. And so, like, when you're going back, when you're making Rise of the Beast, obviously set in '94, how exactly is the timeline sort of working now? Because does it still take place with the original continuity of the Michael Bay films mixed with the Bumblebee film? I think that film is directly addressing this. So, exactly is the timeline
Well,
working?
it's all actually really simple. Bumblebee's 87, we're 94. Michael's starts in 2007. We do our best not to contradict anything, but we don't have to live, if you would, with anything in that movie as long as it's not a direct contradiction. So, for instance, in this movie, you've seen the movie, right?
Mhm.
In this movie, you meet Optimus at a place in his life that's different than where you meet him in the Bay film, right? Like he's really having a lot of questions and vulnerabilities about what he's doing and why he's here. In Bay films, he knows why he's here, if you would, right? So in this film, you're learning along with him why he's here. So we are not contradicting the Bay films, but we are developing the character. So when you get there, you understand the character in a different way. And we try to do that with plot elements. I'm sure we get one or two wrong, but we're trying our best not to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, like, when you sort of when you decided to go back, like, what was the sort of conversations when you were like, let's do Travis Knight's Bumblebee, and then this one with Stephen Caple, Rise of the Beast? Because after last night, there was like, this has been 7 years since last night came out. But
Jesus, that
because
long.
I mean, when I was in high school,
Uh,
Transformers came out in 2007, and that just it hooked my entire generation. But now you're introducing these characters to a whole new generation. So what were their conversations like? This is how we get these new kids wanting because this is an '80s franchise. So
yeah, well, in a lot of ways, the Bumblebee movie was a tip to, if you would, the Generation One, right?
Mhm.
And also, one of the things we wanted for that movie was the world not to know at all about the Transformers and to, in a sense, have an introduction to them into the world in a way that's different. So that, in a way, mandated the past. And I don't know why we settled on 1987, but I think it was a few years after the movie. So in a way, we were pretending in a sense that it was a sequel to the animated movie. But more importantly, it freed us from having to worry about continuity because you're going back before, in a sense, anything has been established. So all you had to do was make sure you didn't contradict it.
and obviously because of the massive success of these films, you get to shoot in incredible locations. So you got to shoot in Machu Picchu for Rise of the Beast. Can you tell me more about like what went into securing that location? Was it something like a phone call, or was it sort of a process?
It's a process because you have to get a government to allow you to come in and shoot on what is essentially a national, well, a treasure of the world, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
they'd never allowed that kind of thing before. I think there was one movie, some Peruvian movie, frankly, it was a small movie, but we couldn't find any real proof of anybody ever shooting there. They're hypersensitive in a great way of protecting the stones there. They didn't want us to do anything. So we were very limited in the equipment we could bring, the things we could do. You couldn't bring food up, so everybody had to go up and down the mountain every day for lunch. So there's a lot of accommodation you make. We met the ministry that was in charge of the sites, and we developed a relationship, and we explained to them the process, and they explained to us what was important to them, and then you reach an agreement on how to do it. Part of what Peru liked was that we weren't there just to shoot Machu Picchu. We wanted to shoot their jungle. We wanted to shoot Cusco and their culture, which is the parade is a thing that goes on. That's a real parade that they do every year. And those are actually real their costumes. So, we're highlighting things that are great about Peru. So they like you coming there if that's what your intention is, and that was our intention.
Yeah, no, it's just I mean, I really enjoyed those scenes, and like when you're introducing a character like Mirage, you're reintroducing Optimus Prime as a different Optimus than we've come to know.
Yep.
So what went behind sort of the decision to take Bumblebee off the table? It's like, this is Bumblebee. I don't know if you intended as like Bumblebee represents a different generation of kids, or from.
No, I mean we love Bumblebee, and I love Bumblebee personally. Like I've spent 17 years with Bumblebee, so 17 or 18 years. Whenever we started developing it. No, I think it was really about introducing a new character into the mix, allowing room for that. Because you can only develop so many characters in one movie, or else you don't get to know anybody. So we really wanted to have a new special character. Mirage turned out into that, which was great. And Bumblebee will always be part of it. It's sort of like I always say that Optimus and Bumblebee are like Batman and Robin. You wouldn't kill off either character. So they'll be around and they're great. But in the Optimus case, we purposely wanted the audience to have a new experience with Optimus, and just as our hope was to be emotionally relatable from a human point of view, we were looking for more emotional relatability from the robots.
Yeah, no, huge round of applause when Bumblebee had his big comeback near the end of the movie. So, that's such a cool moment. So like when you're talking about like you don't want to contradict plot points in the future films or anything like that, but since we only saw them basically in Age of Extinction, and the Maximals are in this film, could we ever see the Dinobots pop up into one of these prequel sort of films, or is that something we'd have to wait for a Transformers 6?
I think you could. I think the question would be, I'd have to go back. We've done 7 movies now, and some are a little bit distant. I'd have to go back and remind myself what does Optimus know about the Dinobots? Like, did we say something about the Dinobots that was a surprise for him to know? Like in this movie, it's a surprise for him to know that the beasts are here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'd have to first do that homework and say, well, is there anything in there that said how he knows them, or any of the Transformers, how do they know him? If there's nothing in that contradiction, then I don't think there's any reason to say why you couldn't.
Yeah, no, that would be really awesome. And so when you also have
I'd like to see the beasts and the Dinobots together.
Yeah. So I got Grimlock right here for you.
Yeah, love
But
Grimlock. Yeah.
but were there any talks about bringing back like some characters we were familiar with, like Hailee Steinfeld or John Cena,
Yes.
or even someone like maybe an Easter egg for one of the like John Turturro's character?
Well, we had John John's character.
Yeah.
That's a more complicated one. We actually had a scene that had Hailee come into this, and I could see Hailee coming into the next one for there's nothing stopping us, and she was phenomenal, and we'd love to have her back. So I think one of the characters that I loved, and then frankly was my son's favorite character, was Ironhide, which we killed off. So we could bring him back because he's not dead yet. So that's an example of the thing we could do now.
Awesome, man. I don't want to keep you too long, but I do have to ask you. I was able to see a concept art from the Transformers 1 at CinemaCon. And what can you tell us about that, casting Chris Hemsworth as Optimus Prime, and when can we maybe get a first look at that movie?
I don't know when the first look, because the animation takes so long, but it's probably not till next spring, early summer is my guess. Well, it was a big deal to cast Chris. And the reason we did is because you're meeting him as Orion Pax, and Peter Cullen is phenomenal, but his voice is old. You feel the age in his voice. I don't mean he's an old guy. I mean, you feel the age, and you needed to feel that Orion Pax had a lot of youth in his voice. And and was more appropriate to the story we were telling, which is the origin story of the friendship between what becomes Megatron and Optimus.
Mhm.
So what I will say is ILM is doing the animation, and the objective here is to be completely original in look, which I think, having seen quite a bit of the, I'll say, the early artwork, I think we're going to achieve. And it's a phenomenal story that comes directly out of the canon of who these guys were and how they fell apart and become such a great, enemies, but best of friends to worst of enemies is a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. And um I don't know if like what's like sort of next for this franchise, I guess, like a Rise of the Beast sequel, I'm assuming is the next one with the G.I. Joe crossover. Is that like a couple of years down the line, or is that something that you're already scripting?
It's a good question. We were about to start a script when the writer's strike happened.
Yeah.
So our hope was we were going to have it for 25, but I think the longer the strike goes, the more it puts it in 26.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it when it happens. But thank you so much for your time, Lorenzo. I really appreciate
Pleasure.
it.
Nice to talk to you, man.
Great to talk to you. Thank you.